I guess I'm sure some more people will pop in as we get started. I'm hosting it with Michael, one of the animators. So we'll
So,
basically just be answering any questions you guys might have, talking about what we've been doing since the last podcast, and just kind of going from there. So, as a quick update, we've been working a lot since the last poll that we had on Letter to the Producer around the first. We've been working a lot on improving the core of the game in terms of basically adjusting what could be adjusted to improve performance on older end computers. And just basically also just reallocating more resources to the actual combat that occurs between the infected and Circ units. We've been essentially working very hard on the pathing and adjusting and fixing bugs that have been reported from people in the community in terms of the lieutenants and Chelsea sometimes malfunctioning. At this point, we feel like all of those issues have been resolved, and it comes down to basically just improving their AI as a whole because they are lacking, and we've heard that feedback consistently, and we agree with that feedback in terms of basically like the lieutenants do need a lot of work. Um, what we're currently planning to do right now in the on the idea of what the vote was to basically wrap up this formation pathfinding stuff. We worked on some stuff yesterday that improves the vehicle to circ interaction so they don't run into vehicles anymore and get stuck. We're testing that. Well, we were testing that this morning. We're going to test it again after the AMA. And if everything works out well, we should have something to show and something for you guys to play Monday or Tuesday that will consist of a newer approach to how infantry to vehicle navigation is handled. So that way, a lot less frustration there when you're issuing move orders and people get clipped or stuck against the vehicle and just give up. Um, and then we're currently working on the vehicle to vehicle interaction to just make sure as well that like that's where it needs to be. To a certain degree, I'm sure we'll still kind of have the logistical issues that you can have in company heroes, where if you accidentally order too many vehicles to move down the same street, to a certain degree, they get stuck. And as far as I'm aware, even Arma has it in some cases, so it won't be inescapable. But we'll do our best to basically mitigate some of the frustration that comes with basically having a crap ton of vehicles. And they essentially all just kind of get stuck on each other, and then you're just screwed because you're playing which ones do I move to make them so they all go? Um, let's see here. We've been adding languages. I think we have to add French and Polish, are the last two that we're adding. And then at that point, we'll maintain the current assortment of languages that are in the game. Let's see. What else is there? And we'll get the questions in just a second. I'm just getting my general update in terms of what we've been doing. They'll be in the next letter to the producer. Because there'll be some extra stuff that I don't cover because I always do it on the first of every month. But I'm just giving a quick little general update. Michael will do his for animation, and then we'll get right into your questions. If there's anyone in the room that wants to basically ask a question on voice, they'll be welcome to just by requesting to speak. Otherwise, you can just ask questions on the questions channel, podcast questions channel. We'll be answering them, me and Michael, to the best of our ability. Um, okay, and then I mean that's pretty much it. Is this the vehicle pathfinding optimization, fixing bugs, and then just again working on the formation system, which would be a really huge thing because you figure we've gotten a lot of feedback of just how frustrating the formations can be at times in terms of basically their responsiveness, how well they can hear things behind them. What else was a good frustration mechanic we've heard? I guess it's also just being able to have it where they alternate. Because they're making a more robust system, so it's easier to like say like, okay, your job is to look in this direction, and you only look away from this direction if something is like of a great enough threat is coming from another direction, which is life threatening in their case. The other thing is that we're adding it in so that they share their seed lists. In older versions of this formation system, they didn't really communicate that someone else saw someone. So the idea is that we'll be simulating that they're talking on their radios. So the idea is that after one person sees them in a formation or a squad, it will slowly but surely go out to everyone within a couple of seconds, and everyone will have that same enemy, and they're aware of it exists. instead of them having to hear it and instead of them having to individually see it. So that will help the squad cohesion because then you figure a sniper doesn't have to see the guy that's coming up behind him if someone else in the team saw him. So he would, in some cases, he would turn around based off of their threat system and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna shoot that person." So that will obviously it'll take some play testing, but we think that will also help quite a bit in terms of basically just kind of helping them just kind of form a better protective bubble sometimes when your back is against the wall. Um, okay, so Michael, do you want to go for animation, and then we'll get into questions?
Yeah, sure. So for the animation side, we got a new mocap suit. It's what's it called?
The XNs, the XN suit.
Yes, the XNs. It's a lot better. We were using the Perception Neuron Pro before.
The Pro V3, whatever, the one that came out this year.
Yeah, and so we had a lot of interference and issues using that one, and so we decided to get the newer XN suit, which is higher quality and allows us to have a little more freedom in terms of movement and capture, so we can kind of make better animations, so we can kind of make the game feel more lifelike. And so that's kind of what we've been playing around with for the last, what was it, like
3 or 4 days.
yeah, 3 or 4 days. We just recorded a bunch of scenes. I mean, in the announcements, you can see we were having a little fun with it, but for the most part, I mean, we've gotten quite a few. Like, I believe there's over. I have like 100 and what is it? I think there's like over 150 animation files that I still have to go through of stuff that we can kind of implement into the game just to add a little more life and fidelity to a few other things. I guess like in terms of gun porn, because a lot of people have been asking about weapons and stuff like that. There's actually a lot of weapons planned to be added. That like right now, I have like maybe uh a lot. There's like 40 weapons
Yeah,
in
that's what I
this
was
game.
saying. You were telling me there was like 40 weapons you were working on.
Yeah, so I'll just go ahead and drop a screenshot. Oh, I don't have Gazo.
Use the
Uh,
snippy tool.
yeah. What the
Yeah,
hell
because
is that?
these are weapons that will go out to the factions. These are weapons that will go out to Fenrir. These are weapons that will go out to Cirque. So basically,
I don't know if you know about Finner.
well, some of them do. If they've been following us for a while, they'll know about Fenrir.
All right, so there is one, for instance. Let me see. I'll drop these pictures in the text channel just of a few weapons.
But
Give me
yeah,
1 second.
beyond that, though, we're also looking into basically improving, like we're redoing the flare animations. We're doing the fire in the air. We're doing civilian idols. We're doing ones where they riot. We're doing animations for when they're basically yelling at you, like basically adding more life and ambience to the world. So as you're walking around these people in the city, they actually have, they're not always playing the same animation. There's a pool of animations. The same thing for Cirque is that it was a big thing that we make a lot of idols and a lot of different types of idols, relaxed idols, aiming idols, just to basically distinguish them a little bit more, so that you don't get that uncanny valley where everyone does the exact same idol at the exact same second. It'll be a lot harder to see 2 or 3 people in a group that are just like, oh, we're gonna do the exact same thing, and it's gonna be like, that you see in some indie games where it's like it's really weird because everyone puts their leg up at the same time or everyone blinks at the same time. So that's something that we're pushing with the mocap suit is to just be able to actually sit there and take it all in and be able to watch the battles and appreciate it a little bit more. And then we've taken the liberty and we did some studies on Left 4 Dead. We were looking into some of their developer content and just kind of figuring out like how they do their death animations and their ragdolls and all that. So that's another thing that we were doing is we were doing hit reactions for bullets. We were doing hit reactions for when you shoot people, for the infected. We were doing death animations for the infected, and then we're going to be basically doing a little bit of a research into Left 4, a little bit more research, I imagine, into Left 4 Dead and doing a physical animation system, where the idea is that like they'll play a death animation, but then they'll ragdoll. So like that's what Left 4 Dead does, for instance, to basically get those very nice deaths where like you shoot someone, they run for a couple of seconds, and then they ragdoll and face plant into a wall. So that will happen in the RTS element, and that'll happen in the first-person element. So now when you shoot someone in the leg, an operator, you'll actually see it in reaction when you shoot someone in the leg or in the head or in the chest, because there will be a mocap animation associated with those points. And then when your units are shooting people, your RTS units, because of spread, because of a bunch of other environmental things that can cause them to shoot other different parts of the body. You'll see those in gameplay, so you'll see them stumble and fall. You'll see them, kind of have really responsive deaths when you're shooting them. So you can actually sit there, and our hope, our goal, is so that way when you're playing the game, you can kind of get to the point of Total War where it's fun to watch them fight. It's really engaging to sit there and be like, okay, like I forgot I'm playing a game. Because sometimes when I play Total War, I'm one of those people that loves to zoom all the way in and watch the details of like they're cutting off each other's arms or it's all this other stuff in terms of the attention to detail of a simulation of the battle. So that's something that we're pushing on with the mocap suit. And because we have the mocap suit, we'll do our first initial passes. We'll like leverage the new technology of Unreal Engine 5, and we'll leverage the technology from the new character creator program that's coming out in about 2 months, we think, roughly. Because then that will allow us to do more with what we have better animations. That's when we'll put in the new assaults. That's when we'll be pushing the other characters that were getting modeled from the ground up to be a little bit more original, to be the final versions of like the heavy and the sniper and all those. Because if you guys haven't seen it, is that you figure I think in one of the last letters to the producers we mentioned that like we were doing the circ, we were cleaning them up in terms of their not their vehicle formats. The vehicles are going to stay as is, but more so the ground part of them, of like the assaults, the medics, the engineers. They were all getting a facelift and a visual polish to go with UE5, and it looked more photorealistic. Because you figure we're gonna be pushing, they blink. We're gonna be pushing that the small little intricate details of how they do idles when they get bored and everything. Um, so that'll be Michael's driving force in terms of basically just kind of when he comes down, we just kind of powwow, we just do the mocap for a week. So far, it's been the second time he's come down. The first time we didn't have that much luck because of the perception neuron kind of screwed us with magnetic interference. So we were sitting in the corner crying because the floor was setting off the sensors. The lights were setting off the sensors. Like literally, your arm would just break inside of itself. If you guys ever seen those weird like things where like animation things were like I don't know if anyone's ever animated before, but it looked like it was a bad constraint or something. So we upgraded to the XN, and this means we can go outside. We can go to the park. We could go to airsoft field, and we can train and basically do record offline. Come back to the computer, download those mocap animations, and then clean them up in the program, and then put them in the game in a matter of, in some cases, hours or days, depending on, the workload of how many animations we did. Because I think it took you like an hour or so to get a couple animations tested.
I would say doing the walk cycles, it took like probably like 4 hours. But I mean, after that, I mean, it was kind of smooth sailing once that was kind of
But that
figured
was
out.
because of the complexity with doing the loops. Make it look
Yeah.
to make it because like when we were doing because we had to like we're not robots, so you figure we would literally go into a room, we'd walk forward, walk left, walk right, walk backwards, and there's always going to be a little bit of an angle that gets added, and there's always going to be an imperfect loop. So it's that matter of basically being able to go back and stitch the frames and move things around, delete some stuff to be able to make it a seamless loop. So when someone's walking forward, it's just looping the same animation again and again and again forward, and then being able to do those blends seamlessly. So that's something we've been, redoing with all of the walk animations, and we're doing civilians, and we're doing some of the more of the infected after the podcast today, and then we'll probably wrap it up next week in terms of anything else that's not working early next week, and then after Tuesday, Wednesday, Michael will basically just be working on cleaning up and getting it all into the engine what's possible, and otherwise some of them might wait until the new character creator program, just so that way we can use it on the newer rig. But we're still kind of trying to figure out a workaround. We think we have a workaround for being able to do it sooner, but we'll see. Um, okay, so let's jump to questions then. Let's see, what do we have here? What's from today? Okay, Zale. So Zelso has a question about the pathfinding test patch. Are there plans to continue moving forward with improving AI pathing and updating the current nav meshing in the map? So when it comes to that, it's going to be based off of just we're gonna push it as far as it'll go in terms of basically the fidelity and the quality of the nav meshing. So it's gonna be an ongoing thing as we get feedback. Because what we've noticed is sometimes we'll think, oh, this is fine, and then somebody else will go play the game in another way, and we're like, well, shit, we didn't think about that combination of moves. We didn't think about how they would react in some of these areas because everyone plays differently. So how it's going to kind of go down is that we'll do this next round of fixes in terms of basically the formation system 2.0, the pathfinding changes. We'll find bugs that we can find, and then we'll put it out to you guys after the playtesters have played it, and then from there we'll be like, okay, what else are issues? What are you running into? Gazo it, YouTube record it, send it to us, and then we'll look at it and we'll figure out like, okay, that's interesting, and then figure out a way of recreating it and then fixing it. Or in some cases, it might just be logistical issues of just people ordered two trucks to crash into each other. There's really not much we can do about that to a certain degree besides just moving them around each other. Because there's always going to be some. I think there's always going to be some pressure points when large vehicles, are moving across each other when it comes down to like even the AAA games have those issues. But we're gonna do our best to just improve it, you know, as we go. Um, so Delta 2.0 next big content update when? So when you're talking about content update, are you talking about maps? Are you talking about weapons? What are you looking for, Delta? If you're still there, I think Delta's dead. Okay, well, I'm just going to guess and say that if you're talking about maps, it's going to be in 2 to 3 months. If you're talking about weapons, it'll be a slow drip every couple of patches. If I had to guess, a new weapon or a couple of weapons for the anarchists, for the other stuff, probably. What would you say, Michael? What's a realistic drop for you?
It'd probably be after the animation stuff. So maybe I'd say you'd probably start seeing it in the updates after maybe like 2 weeks, I would say.
Okay.
That gives me enough time to filter through everything. So then you would start probably seeing like maybe 2 or 3 weapons every, I would say like big push of like every big patch that we have, you'll probably see about 3 new weapons. But ultimately, when it comes down to like dropping like a big content update, it'd probably be when we introduce a new faction. That's when you guys would probably see like a huge push. Like definitely when we do the start focusing on the faction part after the pathfinding, you'll see a lot of weapons all at once.
Especially for because Pierce will be first, and then Natalie. So you figure, Pierce will have a unique weapon. He'll be a hero unit in the game. His officers will have different weapons. They'll play differently than the Cirque. Then from there, we'll work on the Natalie. Same thing for her. She'll have a unique weapon. She'll have a unique people of weapons. They'll have completely different weapons than what you're gonna have. Is the idea to distinguish them. And then,
I
sorry,
guess we should talk about the.
what?
So Winters actually has a new weapon as well. She's gonna have her. It's basically gonna be a beefed up, beefed up M4. It's gonna have, I think we were talking about like adding a little bit more use or utility to Winters to make her more of like, oh, you can take her out there, so she's more of a badass.
Yes.
And it was kind of like we were looking at Command and Conquer Generals. Like, if you guys ever played that game, you have Colonel Burton. When you put him on the field, he would just devastate everything on the field, and that's kind of like I feel like Winter should still kind of have more of a use other than just staying in the base in a corner invisible. I
Yeah.
think it would add a lot more to the gameplay.
Because I was talking to someone on the forums last night that felt the same way. I think there was a thread on it where they were talking about how they don't like how Winters is just relegated to just sitting in the base. So it's a matter of just timing in terms of once we figure out these pathfinding issues and these other systems, we're going to sneak that in there as well. Is some actual reason to want to bring her out into the field. We're thinking about XP boost in terms of basically when she's around units, she inspires them to um, basically gain XP quicker. We're thinking about basically maybe an accuracy boost. And basically, like, in terms of like they fight a little more confidently as well. Because the XP boost would also increase their health. So you figure, because every time they level up, they increase their health, is the idea. So we're kind of playing around with that. I think you figure the lieutenants and the other faction leaders will have their own little respective things that they add to gameplay. Um, so there is a wave survival mode. Currently, it's currently the wave survival mode is the map. we're doing another one that's gonna replace it. It's been delayed a bit with all the recent changes to like putting in the C5 Galaxy and a couple other things for the long term for bringing in an Abrams and other heavy equipment. But we're going to refocus on that map that foreseeably very soon. And the idea would be is that we're going to try and push out once we get the pipeline and everything situated. We're going to try and push out horde maps every couple of months, depending on just when time allows, because we want to do different ones based off of or inspired off of different like things in the genre. So we wanted to make our own version of Alexandria. We wanted to make our own version of the Mall from Shaun of the Dead, which the one we're making right now is our own version of the Mall from Shaun of the Dead. Um, and basically just kind of do little fun one-off horde missions where you basically just push into a mall, you push into like a, like an underground facility, and you just hold it for as long as you can. And you basically always start from the same position, and then you start with like it's kind of like a pseudo horde mode because you fight to a center location or you fight to where you want to defend, and then once you set up your base and you get things going, there'll be different areas to defend. You can spread out as far as you want within some constraints of not being able to kill the pods anymore. And then, you just defend. And you just see how many waves you can survive. And then the idea is that we're going to link that into the Steam leaderboard system so that you can actually track your kills and your time based off of your friends and other people on the internet on some maps to compete to see who's doing the best to kind of give some kind of competitive aspect to that. Um, so that is something that we're looking into because right now the horde map is kind of like a placeholder. I mean, seeing if people want it, is it something they want us to push? And it seems like it's a smaller demographic, but there's still definitely a group of people that I know of that play the horde map and do want more content and do want that map to be kind of because personally that map we have in there is just not very good from a design standpoint. Um, Let me see what else is there. Is there anyone that wants to ask a question on voice? Does anyone have their hand up? Let me just make sure I haven't been ignoring anyone. No, it doesn't look like anyone has their hand up. So, okay. I'll go back to text questions unless there's a question. And for those that are watching on Twitch, feel free to ask questions in the Twitch chat. I'm monitoring that as well. So you figure I'll be able to just jump back and forth between Discord and Twitch as we go. Let's go up. Let's see if there's any questions that I missed. Let's see. Okay, just a moment. Am I blind? Oh, I'm looking at the wrong channel because I'm blind. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so will Chelsea be taught how to danger assess areas to prevent instances where she suicide runs into an area, which results in her untimely death? Will she by chance have an endgame option outside of assassinating Winters where she can essentially escape the island? So, that's a really good question. I'll hit on that one because I know that comes up quite a bit on the forums. It comes up a lot in discussions on Discord. And I kind of briefly went into it earlier, but more so, the idea is that you figure we're gonna grandfather Chelsea's survival and some of the Lieutenant AI into the vote that we did previously in the beginning of the month because you figure it's a core enough issue to where it needs to be solved before we go back to factions and civilian management. So the idea is that basically Chelsea and all the lieutenants will basically have like a play style akin to like inspiration from a different character. So Chelsea will be more inspired from Alec Mercer, for instance. So you figure she'll have abilities that have AOE. She'll be able to jump around. She'll be able to basically disguise herself as different people. And the idea is that we're going to give her a lot more abilities and a lot more, I guess, better intelligence to where she can actually decide, okay, I need to leave. I'm going to die, so I need to break line of sight. I need to run around a corner, or I need to disguise as a civilian, and basically just walk, and make them basically have to commit an atrocity to figure out which one I am. Being able to, if you trap her in a cage or you trap her like in an area where people have done it in the past, she knows to jump out. She can jump over fences. She can jump through fences and break them. You can't run her over. She'll basically just sidestep out of the way of the striker or whatever it is. You shoot her with a certain vehicle, she'll have a chance to dodge the shells. Um, we're looking at she'll have assassinations in terms of basically like if you're not paying attention and she walks up behind one of your units, she'll insta kill them. You know, it's the idea of like, okay, she's an actual threat. Because right now she's just kind of a meme. She just kind of, because right now Chelsea has the same AI as a standard infected, so she has no ability of self-preservation. That doesn't even come into her. The only extra thing that she can do over a standard infected is jump on your helicopters and beat them to death when she's on them. So you figure when it comes down to it, each lieutenant will have a playstyle, and the playstyle will go into like one's going to be stealth, one's going to be guns, one's going to be buffing, and the stealth one will use knives and basically like be able to cloak, and basically she'll have a subset of infected that work towards that playstyle, and then the one with the guns, he'll be the other one with the gun. He'll be one of the police people that Chelsea turned, and then the buffing guy will be a medic or basically the doctor from the book that Chelsea first infects, that essentially, I think it was in the last letters of producer actually, that he'll be able to buff and heal units that are infected around him. And the idea is going after each lieutenant is a different play style. Going after Chelsea is a different play style. So you have to prepare yourself and kind of plan for like, okay, who are going to be the elite people around each lieutenant? Who's going to be, what is Chelsea going to do when I've killed her lieutenants and she is the last one? You know, is she going to basically double up and basically like just go and hide in her like her hive and basically let her people do the work? Is she going to lead the charge and basically an attack only in some select areas where she has a big enough guard to provide her security? Because another big thing is we wanted to go back and add to where the spitters will actually like run around her and basically be her like her dogs or pets. So they essentially like protect her and they kind of form a buffer in terms of basically like before you see her, or rather you won't see them because they're always like hiding and but the idea is we wanted to pull inspiration from the Velociraptor looking enemies from Dead Space 2 from the Church of Unitology was the ultimate idea for the spinners. So eventually you'll see their AI change, and depending on how much time we're able to fit into this polish change, or if we need to put it off later, that'll be part of it. In terms of those are supposed to be her protectors, and they're supposed to be a recon unit, and they're supposed to be essentially the force that kind of patrols the zones when the standard infected aren't there, and they're basically meant to ambush you and essentially like let other people know you're there by seeing you, and then calling a horde over. So those are kind of all changes that we're planning on doing, and it's just a matter of fitting it in as we just kind of go through the roadmap. Because at this point, we're going to have to reorganize the roadmap for year two and the leftovers from year one to properly hit upon all the points that everyone's been telling us. Because quite a bit of times we've had to stop and be like, okay, these people came to us in an AMA and they came to us in like a talking to us on voice, and they came to us with really good ideas, or even on the Steam forums, and we put those in there. But obviously, putting in those things obviously increase the time it was going to take us to do some things on the roadmap. So I think going ahead also is a good venue to mention it. Is we're going to have to plan those roadmaps differently and plan them in a way where basically we are able to, in the best way possible, be able to plan for suggestions from the community that get added in of like, oh, we want this, we want that, we prefer this change. In terms of basically we had an idea, it didn't work, and we had to change it. So it gives a little more breathing room. So that's something we'll be working on better in the future as well, in terms of basically just how that roadmap is laid out and allocating more time for user contributions, user suggestions, so then that way, we're able to stay to that schedule a little bit better. So we don't have to delay a roadmap again. Looks like someone raised their hand. Okay, so Angel Fox, I'm gonna invite you, and you have the floor to ask your question.
Oh, yes. Is there gonna be like anything involving like the buildings, like any use for them?
Which buildings in particular? Usually the buildings that are in the levels.
No, it's like you know how you capture the point, like the sector and stuff, and you have like a military base or like the dockyard. Like, would they be like any use, or are they just like there?
Oh, you're talking about something along the line of like strategic resources, where you can capture, like when you have a zone, you can maybe
Yeah.
build something there, and you can. So that's something that myself, Dimitri, and Derek have been talking about back and forth constantly. We're going to test that idea with the airfields. Is we're going to add an air control tower that you can build, and then that's how you would bring in super units like the Abrams, and that's how you're going to evacuate civilians from zones to basically take away resources from Chelsea, so that way it'll open up another play style of basically if people that just want to literally just empty zones can. And it'll constantly just feed them from your camps to the airport. They jump onto a C5. It takes them to a quarantine facility, and then from there it's another way of playing. And then on top of that, we were talking about Natalie will be the first faction that actually does it, but she'll have chop shops and other locations on the map that will be able to they'll steal vehicles from the factions, and they'll steal ambient vehicles from the world, and they'll take them to basically convert them into a scrap resource that allows them to build their vehicles. Beyond that, we're thinking about gas stations and we're thinking about ammo depots. And we're possibly going back and forth on the idea that some police cars and ambulances will have like caches when you play, so that it's a one-time use for you to just kind of go there and use the supplies if you're in a jam. If you remember where the ambulances are or the police trucks are, the police trucks, the police vehicles, then you could get ammo and
I'm
other
getting 100%
supplies from
behind
those. But that's pretty much the extent of what we're thinking at this point. It's just again,
So,
yeah.
like, when you capture like a base, perhaps if you like added something for like the base have like a value in it, like more resources for like the other team, like what would like the other factions do?
Well, I mean, you figure we're trying to drive the resources based off of things that everyone needs. So ammo, medical supplies, the airports will probably be the only thing that'll be unique to Cirque. Because the core idea is we're designing three core factions that are going to go head off against each other that have a that have an end goal in sight in terms of they're meant to kill each other. So or they're just trying to survive. So Chelsea, Fenver, and Cirque are the two primary factions, and then everyone else are sub factions or ambient factions that kind of help populate the world, and you can ally with them or not ally with them is a general principle. So they would sometimes occupy or build near those locations to use those supplies. Um, is the general idea.
Or are we still, is it gonna be like, do you still have the option just to kill all three factions?
Absolutely, that's completely up to you.
That is very good.
Yeah, because I mean the biggest thing about the game is that you figure pandemic mode's not canon, so the idea is it's your story in terms of how you want to play, how are you going to solve Chelsea, how are you going to solve Fenver, which is a PMC group coming in to basically try and reobtain the Penguin virus from Chelsea. So they're there just to help hunt Chelsea, and they don't really care about you. But they're still going to be in the way. So they'd still be someone that you could basically fight because they'll still shoot you and attack you. But they're more far off at this point, and they're gonna probably be a faction that we do push in year 3 after we get more of these systems assembled and more of the core is there, so where there's less frustration in game, your game to game plays. You can just play it for like 8 hours and it's good, and there's no like issues. Um, okay, so let me move back to the audience. Let me see if there's any other questions that I have missed. Um, Verticality. So that's a good question. Um, we are going to be pushing verticality in the future in terms of basically. I can't give you a definite date, but as far as what we're planning to do is we want to have it to where units can get on the rooftops, because right now when you get on the rooftops, it's done. It's just Chelsea's screwed, the factions are screwed. It's just no one has the tech to get up there. So we're going to be adding it to where units can rappel up and down the roofs is what we want to do. And then we want to also add a system where basically units will know that they could get on the roof by running into a doorway, having a traveling system where they go up the staircase and then they get ejected to the top of the roof. So the idea is that if you're on top of a building and you're just shooting infected all day long, they can go through there and they can overwhelm your units if you don't have a guard at the doorway. Because then they'll just run through the door, and then 30 to 40 seconds, depending on how tall the building is, they'll come out the top door, and your units can do the same thing. But on top of that, we'll be adding it to where you can repel. We're still debating on the idea if they can climb, similar to Left 4 Dead. I think we're gonna test that internally to basically see how it feels. We want to definitely add the ability where they can climb buildings and they can also go through there. Um, and some of them will just fall and die. Is the idea. So there's going to be like if they're climbing similar to Total War, a percent of them will always fall and die. Not everyone makes it to the top. So that's something we're thinking about. Because you figure again right now it's just you get on a building and it's GG. You land a striker on a building, it's just GG. They can't do anything to you unless they're spitters. You're pretty much screwed. Well, they're screwed. Um, it's going to stay that way for landing only on top of vehicle building rooftops. As it stands right now, we did not model a majority of the interiors. They're all faked via like the approach that Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man, did on PS3 or 4 it was, where basically you look at it and it's actually just a texture faking the interior to save resources. So you figure some of the warehouses have fake interiors, some of the skyscrapers have fake interiors, some of them just are just a generic color, so you can't actually see inside of them. Um, so when it comes down to it, we think the furthest we're going to go with that is having some interiors. We're adding like 9 interiors to buildings that are just very simple gun stores, grocery stores, and we're testing that idea with the factions because they're going to operate and live out of those zones, especially Chelsea. Not Chelsea, the anarchists, Natalie. And then beyond that, I don't believe we're going to go in terms of basically doing every single building interior, and it's mostly just going to be okay. You can get on the roofs, and we allow more ways to get on the roofs. There's a possibility we could unlock the ability to build on top of those roofs, depending on just we're waiting until we test out them being able to get up there, them being able to climb the roofs, and then we'll at that point look at removing the restriction on not being able to build on rooftops, because in that way it would open up more gameplay opportunities for people. Um, but that's something that we can't really answer yet until we have more time to kind of just have in the oven to test it, play it, see how it feels. Um, it's max for Avalon. For your question, Michael, we predominantly use 3ds Max. Okay, and then Cheeky Reaper, we are working on a tutorial. It's just one of those things where basically um, we are waiting until more of the core is finalized, and then at that point we're going to have like a subset of tutorials similar to Arma. I'm the one that's actually doing the tutorials. I've already started on some of them. And the idea is they're going to be small little scenarios that just load you into the open world mission. And they just sort of like go here, defend there, build this base here. And it'll be small little bite-sized tutorials, and we'll just add to that over time. But right now, we're just focused on getting the core where it needs to be, and then we're going to go back and do those tutorials. And I'll probably be doing them alongside some of the more basic stuff anyway, because there is a steep learning curve. And I hear that a lot and a lot, is the game is, well, very hard to just pick up and play in some cases about watching a bunch of YouTube videos and stuff like that. So we are aware of that. Um, we just kind of jump around, see if there's any other questions that I missed. So is the workshop going to say music or do more of everything about the game? So when it comes down to it, we are planning to move the workshop to mod.io for platform neutrality, so we can put it on GOG, and we can put it on the Epic Games, and we can put it on other ecosystems like the Microsoft Store. And from there, people can still access mods via their account that they have on that platform. So and then from there, at the same time, we're going to be pushing essentially to have, you know, mods in terms of weapons, in terms of sounds, in terms of character changes, in terms of adding new gameplay. Um, we're drawing a lot of inspiration from Satisfactory. We're drawing a lot of inspiration from Insurgency, the second one. So the idea is that you figure when we get to the point of doing the modding SDK, when everything's said and done and solidified, we want to have it to where you can do total conversion mods. You can add in what do they call those monsters from Starship Troopers? Help me out. You don't remember Starship Troopers, Michael?
Dude, I've never watched Battlestar Galactica. Like what?
You
Excuse
suck.
me.
So okay, so like you can add in the bugs from Starship Troopers. You can add in like the zombies from another whatever. Like the idea is to be able to get it to that point to where you can just change it out to whatever you want. You can change out the weapon so they balance the way you want them to balance. So if you don't like our weapon balance, then you can do your own, and then you can release it to your friends. And that kind of stuff is the general principle behind it. Is the that level of modability. Um, and then obviously adding in your new weapons. Or if you want to replace the vehicles of T-80s, you can do that. It's whatever you want to do. Or if you want to add new ones. That's the general design principle. Is that when we get to that point, allow people to. We'd have an incubator or like a session where we basically would have probably like 3 to 6 months after everything's said and done. Around the co-op basically, because we want to do modding before we do the co-op. Because then that way people can take the mods and essentially just make their own content and all the other stuff, and then we can do it for the co-op so people can play with mods in those ecosystems of like, oh, we're gonna play a Starship Troopers run, we're gonna play a Star Wars run, and people can do that because then they'll be able, when the co-op comes, the idea is we would have tested it with those mods, but the idea is that we want to have like a period of time regardless for modding where we go and we find people from the XCOM community, we find people from the Solaris community or just other modders that have joined our Discord, and we're like, hey, can you guys come and test out our SDK and tell us what you like and what you dislike? And then from there, we'll basically work with you to expose the systems that you want us to expose and to make sure that there's proper tutorials, there's proper like an idea of how to do these things so that this modding ecosystem can thrive and it's not just, my God, this is horrible to work with. So that's the biggest thing is actually during the initial pass and then inviting people from the modding community to come in and work with us to improve it if something's not up to snuff. And one of the people that is one of my programmers is actually a really big, is a modder on Solaris, so he's a big driving force in terms of like, hey, we should do this, we should do this, and basically like it's easier to change some aspects of gameplay, and anyone can do it in terms of adding new buffs and new restrictions that like on units, very easily. Um, let's see. What else is there? Let's see, what else is there? Let's see if I can find any other questions. Does anyone else have any other questions? Because we have 20 minutes. We were planning for to basically answer people's questions and just kind of hang out with you guys and see how you guys felt about the game. Now, it doesn't have to be just questions about what we're. It can be questions about like what do you like about certain aspects of gameplay? What do you dislike? This is a good venue to basically just kind of talk about just pretty much anything, any ideas or suggestions that you guys have. As long as it's said in a respectful manner, we're always open for constructive criticism in terms of basically, well, I don't like this system and I think it could be better in this way or that way. And we'll always
No,
take
I
that to
think your
heart.
system sucks, bro.
It does suck. I'm
Sucks
gonna go
shit.
cry. I'm gonna go cry myself to sleep now. Thank you, Michael. Okay, so we got a question from Angel Fox, so I'll invite him. Hello.
Uh,
You have the floor.
is there gonna be like any more vehicles in like the chopper range?
Michael, you wanna take this one?
Vehicles. All right, so have you seen Gundam Wing?
Oh my
Like
god,
Gundam
never mind,
Seed?
never
No,
mind. I'll answer this question. He's trolling.
no,
No.
no. Okay, so like for tanks, I mean, we're looking at like a M1 Abrams, but ultimately that kind of still comes down to once we start implementing factions, we'll start having mechs and shit like that, like Starship
What?
Troopers. Like
No, he's
ODST
crazy.
dropships, like straight up, bro. Like they're gonna start coming from space.
Oh my
Fucking
god.
Finrar units are gonna start fucking coming out of the ODST Hell pods.
I
We're
hate
gonna
this.
introduce Hell Divers, by the way. But yes, to answer your question, we do plan to add more vehicles.
I hate this place. So we're adding. So we're thinking about adding a LTV, an Abrams, a VTOL, uh,
Bradley.
a Bradley maybe. Where's Bradley still on the wish list?
No, come on.
Okay, we're still on the wish list, but it comes down to time it takes to model each vehicle. And then let's see, what was the last one? It was, oh, we're thinking about replacing the mines and having a mine thrower vehicle, where basically you build a special structure or like a shed. And the idea is, well, it's not a shed; it's just a housing unit for the mine thrower. And the idea is you select a structure, you choose where you want it to basically, spray out mines, like it's basically like keep an area to a certain density, and then the mine thrower will go out there and basically deploy those mines for you. Because placing individual mines right now from the engineer is, well, not very
Boring.
fun. So you figure that's another thing we're looking at in terms of the mine thrower vehicle. I'm trying to think what else there is. I mean, that's all there is right now because you
What
figure
about
we
the
know.
sensor?
What did you say?
What about the sensor aura, the one that's supposed to like sense zombies?
The
Because I
tac
don't really
sensor?
know how that works.
Okay, the tac sensor basically reveals units through walls, so it's supposed to pulse them so you can see their signature when they're coming. That's going to be expanded to basically also be able to detect infected people in the future, so that way it'll be better for like when you're actually vetting civilians in terms of who's infected and who's not. Um, we're talking about having the scientist, so it has a way of doing that as well, via like an ability or either a weapon it can carry around to basically scan people. But that's pretty much it in terms of vehicles. If you're talking about structures, we are looking into guard towers, and we're looking into another tier of walls that have battlements on the top, so your units can walk on top of them, and there'll be like little staircases they can walk up, and then they can walk along the rooftops. So, or not the rooftops, but the wall tops, the battlements basically. So, that's something we're looking into there. Did that answer your question?
Uh,
Okay. All right. So
but
let me.
with
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
you said you mentioned the weapon that the scientist would be like holding and scanning. Would it be able to do it automatically, so you don't have to like individually scan
We
them?
plan on doing both. So we plan on having it to where basically you can do it yourself if you really want to take control of people directly via the scientist, and we're going to have it to where it's via ROE. Is that if you put a scientist or you put a scanner in a key position, when someone approaches your structures and the system is like, okay, I just saw this civilian enter your gate. I'm going to look at the information I have available, and I'm going to determine where are they going. Are they going to the euthanization tent? Are they going to general hold? Or are they going to the cages? And based off of those three things, they would be like, okay, you're infected, so my ROE says I send you to euthanization, or my ROE says I'm going to send you to the cages because the player wants to farm DNA. And then at that point, you can choose like, okay, I want to move them somewhere else. If you go to the cages, and then the idea is that there will be carryover rules. So if the cages get full, you can set, okay, just dismiss them, tell them to go away, or send them to euthanization. So the idea is that it'll be multiple layers that you just configure, and then the units just do it to the best of their ability with the information that's available. And then you just want to jump in probably every 5 or 10 minutes and look at it and be like, okay, that's right, or okay, you know what? Let's move these people around. Let's do this, because it's always to a certain degree automation's great, but you're still going to want to have a human eye in there every 5 or 10 minutes to just see what they're doing and course correct if something's wrong. Um, Okay, so let me go on to the next question. Let's see. So let me jump to podcast questions. Oh, Michael's been answering those. So then, let me go to someone raised their
Wait,
hand.
let's see. Oh, never mind. Go ahead.
I was gonna invite Vishnex.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So Vishnex92, I invited you to talk.
Hello.
Hello.
So your conversation also prompted another question by me,
Hit me with
which
it.
I'm going to clarify first. For the we already there's already the option to put civilians in holds, euthanize and whatnot. Will there be the opportunity to capture live infected
Yes.
directly?
Yes, we are. So we actually, when we made the cages, we made larger cages. We showed off one a while ago with like a juggernaut inside one of the cages. Um, that's going to be farther off, but we're really big fans of Monster Hunter. You figure when it comes down to it, so we made sure we designed the cages in a way where they could be airlifted in, and we were going to reuse the basically the huge transport because the helicopter because that can lift like things that are really heavy. Um,
Right.
yeah, so the idea is that we were going to have it to where you could basically knock them out, put them in the cages, and farm DNA, and then if the power went out, they could break out and go on a killing spree. Or in some cases, Chelsea might target your facilities because you're basically collecting too many of them and you're pissing her off, so she'll maybe try and sabotage your power to basically like have a force that tries to break out from inside your base. So that is definitely something that we were thinking about. If you scroll up yay high in the announcements, you'll probably find the thing up there. It's just a matter of just when we can get to the point of implementing it, which would ideally be when we focus on. Let's see. That'd probably be the AI changes. That's towards the end of year two roadmap, so it's not going to be immediate because we're going to focus on the polish that we have now. So pathfinding, the fixing the any left performance issues. The let's see formation, some quality of life changes here and there like Chelsea stuff. Then we're gonna move back to civilian management. Then we're gonna do factions. Then factions we're gonna probably tweak up and play around with whatever's left of Lieutenant AI. But at that point, it'll be infection growths. It will be the base polish in terms of adding new structures, adding new vehicles to the game. And then at that point, I believe somewhere around there, it's also a bounties revamp, and then it's also AI changes, and those would probably be around either the body revamp or the AI changes, where we might try and squeeze in like Monster Hunter type of approach. If you can, there's another way of farming them, and you can actually use special weapons to basically capture them and learn about them, so that way you can better defend against them. Because we are going to be pushing a DNA research tree that improves your ability's resilience towards the infection, slows down, like, so they're less likely to get infected when you get meleeed. It takes longer for them to turn, and you figure we're we adding in DNA syringes that you can stock up and buy. The idea is that you can inject your units with them to counteract the infection in the field. So then that way, if you can't afford to get them back, you can't get a helicopter out there, you can basically have them inject themselves, and it'll buy them time until you get them to a healing center to basically, stave off the infection. There's no cure. It's more so just mitigating it in terms of basically like, okay, when are they so far gone that you're going to have to kill them? So it's about basically making sure your units never get to that point, and then building up their resistances to be able to stop that in terms of because that's why like we have that red infection meter, but it's not really that system's kind of mostly disabled, and it only ever gets infected if you run into a gas tower zone. It's the only time it's really easy to lose control of one of your units, but that system will be expanded upon. It'll just kind of go into you know that layer of like, okay, I need to understand the virus so I can better protect my units against it, kind of deal.
Gotcha.
Anyway, okay, so let me move back. Oh, sorry, another question. Okay, well, hold on. Let me give another person a chance, and then raise your hand again, and then I'll do my best to get you back in, because we have 9 minutes left before we wrap for today. Because me and Michael have to put on the
Yep.
mocap suit soon and do some civilian animations.
Real quick, Sam has this question right here. Let's see. Why did you guys take such an open approach to development for this game, and what are some of the benefits and drawbacks?
Want to take this one? Oh, you want me to deal with the hard ones? I talk. Oh, fine. So the
I love
biggest.
your voice.
I hate you. So the biggest reason why we decided to take the open approach to development is, I mean, the simplest way of saying it is we're sick and tired of other developers just thinking the shit doesn't stink and don't actually take into consideration what the community has to say in terms of some things. So, you figure myself and Michael and other people on the team, we like having open communication. We like talking to people, and as long as it's civil, there's no problem. In terms of like, okay, let's hear what people have to say. Let's hear what they like. Let's hear what they dislike, and then let's fix it. Let's figure out how to make a system better if our initial idea didn't work. And that was a big driving force behind a development of Cepheus Protocol. Is we have our ideas, we have our roadmap, we have what we want to do, but at the same time, we're still making a product to an audience. So there has to be a give and take in terms of basically just kind of like that synergy, that communication between people that are buying the game and the people that are making the game. And in our opinion, there's not enough of that. So this is kind of our way of, I guess you can say, encouraging it via these podcasts and via our open policy of talking to people on Discord in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it, and our letter to the producers so people can know, like, okay, no bullshit. This is what's going good. This is what's going bad. And we just throw it out in the field, and people can basically we can work with them to kind of figure out, in some cases, how to do things or X, Y, and Z. Obviously, the con is sometimes it just puts a little pressure on us in terms of basically like, okay, we need to put a poll out. We need to basically see if we're on the right page with everyone else in terms of what we perceive are the big issues. So I mean, it's basically just making sure what we're, communicating is the only thing. Is just because sometimes developers tend to be introverts, so we like to just kind of not talk to people. So I basically try and make sure that we're introverted, extroverted as much as possible to just kind of not get into little shells and just working on little areas, and then we're just like, we don't let you guys know what's going on. So that's obviously a con for us at least. Is a lot of developers I know just hate talking to people, but it's not personal. It's more so they're just shy. So it's about basically getting outside of that shell and just having the approach of like, hey, let's make the game better. Let's meet halfway, kind of deal for development. Um, so when it comes to on track with the existing roadmap, no, there's no way. You figure when it comes down to it, we're going to have to refactor the roadmap based off of the changes that we've gotten from suggestions from the community, and based off of just delays that we've ran into in terms of things breaking, other issues that we didn't expect. Um, I mean, it's always that line that like no plan actually survives contact with the enemy. In terms of basically like, okay, we had these ideas, but sometimes we have to move them around. We got to rearrange them based off of just someone might come in and give us some feedback that makes us have to move some stuff around. And enough people we put a poll up, and then they're like, well, shit, we thought that system was good. It wasn't good, so we're gonna have to go back and change it. So I guess it's also having that versatility of like, okay, we need to sometimes move stuff around. I guess that's also a con, and sometimes it might take a little bit longer to do some of the roadmap items because of that openness to development. But I believe the game is better for it because then it's the collaborative effort of like, okay, we're all working towards the goal of improving the game. And yes, while it might take longer for the more fancy bells and whistles, it'll be in a better place by the time it gets to that point. Um, let's see. Is there any questions? Oh, okay. Angel Fox, and we have 4 minutes left, so we'll get one from Angel, and then we'll get a couple more from Tech. So, Angel, I invited you. You have the floor.
So you know how the civilians have like guns, right?
Yes.
Would you be able to like recruit them in like your army and give them like more guns to say?
Uh, currently there aren't any plans for that. I mean, as it stands right now, our goal with the civilians is to you bring them in, you disarm them, you put them to one of the three hives, and the three divisions, and then from there, they're meant to be shot off the island or basically kept there, depending on if you're trying to mine DNA or if you're trying to protect them. If you don't think that if you blow your option of evacuating them, if there's enough demand, if there's enough people that actually want to basically be able to arm the civilians and use them in some limited capacities, we could look into that. As far as I know, if they have a gun and you tell them to shoot someone, they should actually shoot them. There's just no ability to actually change out their weapon as it stands right now. But I mean, that kind of comes down to just kind of again the collaboration thing. Is right now we don't perceive that as something to focus resources on, but if we get to the point of implementing it and there's enough people pushing for it, then it's kind of one of those things that we have to reevaluate that. So I mean, you figure. I mean, I'm not against it. It's more so just we have so many things on our plate right now that it's just kind of like that way more of like off on the future when everything's implemented and everything's more solidified. We'll regroup on that. We'll have an AMA, and then that way if there's enough people that are like, yeah, we agree, we want to have that, then we'll maybe put up like a test branch and just see if it feels right.
Alright. Thanks for the podcast stuff. I gotta go.
No worries. Alrighty. So one more question on text. We have 2 minutes left. So, are there any
Here's a
other
big one.
where? Oh, okay, mystics. Regarding the attack helicopter, whose name completely escapes me at this time, is there any plans to have different loadouts for these vehicles? Any similar ones, such as having dumbfire rockets for crowd suppression versus anti-tank rockets for dealing with jugs and gregs? Would it be possible to have a hold fire option for secondary weapon systems when a vehicle has more than two types of weapons to make use of such a chain gun plus missile launcher combo? Was the question I was going to ask in voice. Okay, so when it comes to that, we are planning that we're saving that for the doctrine polish that I was talking about previously. Is that base and doctrine polish that I mentioned after we do the infection roof and some of the lieutenant stuff? Is that we're going to go in and we're going to add ornaments, loadouts to the Little Bird, to the Black Hawk, and to the Chinook and the and some of the Apache. Sorry, it's the Apache. It's a Sharon basically. Is the one you're talking about, I believe. That would allow you to augment them based off of different roles and gameplay. An example. God damn it, Michael! That fucking Gundam meme. So the idea is that you figure we would have the Black Hawk, where basically we want to put an option to hunt and kill Gregs. So like something that scans them and something that can shoot missiles under the ground to kill them. We want to add an option to the Little Bird to have the miniguns or the rocket launchers. We want to add it to the Apache so it has different loadouts based off of just different types of armaments it can use. We're planning on doing it to where you essentially, like, if you guys ever played Wargaming, that franchise, where you could disable an ammo type or you could leave it on and they just fire everything they have based off of what's available to them in that that availability of like what weapons are enabled. So if you build, let's say, a little bird, and it has if we go the option of having a rocket launcher and chain guns, which I don't think we'll add both. If a weapon does have a vehicle does have two weapons, the idea is you can toggle one or the other off, and they'll just interchangeably just fire them based off of their AI. So it's like, okay, you know, I see a crap ton of infected, I'm just gonna unload with the chain gun, and then I'm going to fire a couple missiles as long as the line of sight is accessible to shoot the missiles. And then if you disable the missiles on the next pass, they just would stop using the missiles and they just saturate it with the chain gun. Is the idea? Um, God, is that Mickey Mouse? What is that? Oh my, is that Kingdom Hearts Mickey Mouse? I can't even. Anyway, so yeah, that's the general idea. Is that we're pushing for something along those lines in terms of that allow that when we get to the base polish and the doctrine polish, where those are basically going to be doctrine points that you would allocate in, and the doctrine tree will be expanded to basically you as you play, you essentially would be able to detect into better weapons and equipment for your playstyle, whether it be armored, whether it be mobile infantry, or whether it be the engineers. Just the engineers are going to get love too. They're getting drones. They're getting robots. No, not those kind of robots that Michael's posting in the channel.
Come on, bro.
They're getting drones. They're getting like little drones or whatever, guns and like all that stuff. But yeah, they're not going to. Goddamn Gundams. What were the questions? If you alien and infected out of the map, well, yeah. I mean, you figure when it comes to the airlift system for infected, it's going to be basically putting them inside of cages. As far as we're not going to really go to the level of being able to take an infected and kind of drop them outside the boundaries of the map. Or you're talking about someone that's infected when you. Oh, you're talking about like a civilian that's infected, right? Ghost and Victor. Okay, so the idea is if you keep evacuating civilians, it'll cause chaos on a container ship that's off the coast, and eventually they'll blow up the ship, and you can see the ship, and you can check its status as you play. So you can click on it, and you can see like just how many people you've evacuated that were infected and turned, and how many people they've killed. And if you keep doing it, then the idea is that they'll blow the ship up, and then that'll close off your option to evacuate. So the idea is that you want to make sure you're properly screening these people. Otherwise, you're just intentionally going to make it to where they have to blow up that ship because they're afraid of the virus spreading to the mainland. Because they're not evacuating people to like the actual mainland. They're putting them on like a ship that's off the coast, and then from there just you know quarantining them and watching them. Because in the book, it's alluded to that the virus is airborne, and Chelsea can activate the spores in people on a time release. So the idea that she can have people turn up to 8 to 16 minutes after they're infected. Obviously, that's game time, so that means it could be minutes or it could be hours that Chelsea can choose to basically turn someone. Because 18, I think like 8 to 16 minutes is like a day, half a day, if that in the game. So it's about like 6 to 8 hours. I think is the max. God damn it. So the people on Twitch have no context when I'm saying God damn it to, but Michael keeps posting Gundam memes. Those damn Gundams.
Transformers, you pleb.
That's oh. Okay. So anyway, yeah, that wraps up all of our time. Thank you guys for coming. We'll be doing it again in about 2 to 3 weeks. Duravar was sick, so he'll be hosting us when he's feeling better. In about two to 3 weeks roughly. I'll get with him to figure out when he wants to do the normal format. Because the normal format is he asks us questions, and then we have some of the developers on, and then at the end we take questions. We decided to make this a little more freeform, just so we can kind of see how people were feeling about lately, last couple patches, last couple of announcements, and just kind of see what people's concerns are. Um, and just to kind of leave it on this note, we do know there's too much. I believe that the term of music was there's too much going on, too much micro. Did
Yeah.
you want to address that? Just so we mention it so they're aware.
All right.
Oh Jesus.
Are you ready for this one?
Yeah, sure.
All right. I f- okay. So for micromanaging, I have been nagging Dark consistently about how I do not like how many buttons I have to press to kind of like just get my units to do certain things and stuff like that. I feel like there should be a little more automation just to make it a little more, what's the word? Kind of like you don't have to babysit your units all the time. Kind of like they should already know, hey, I don't need to fucking be constantly pinged to run around, like turn around to seek people, or like the sense of like how their sight and threat system and detection is. I feel like the units should be a little more advanced than that because I mean technically they do have like a military background, so I'd assume they would kind of have situational awareness. When it comes to like the power strips, like what was we had a system to where it should automatically just go ahead and connect the cables, the
See?
cable
Yeah,
management,
the auto wiring.
like stuff like that, like kind of figuring out ways to kind of keep the interaction with you guys in the game to kind of add the immersion, but at the same time have the option for people that just want to play.
Don't want to sit there and get into the nitty gritty. So it's something that we're looking into in terms of where we can do that to kind of like facilitate and kind of just help out the micro of just, oh my god, I have to manage so many systems. I have to do so much hand holding and babysitting. So we are constantly looking at that. If you guys have any suggestions or ideas, you guys are always welcome to drop that into the suggestions channel. If there's an aspect of gameplay that you think could be better automated, we have a thread on the Steam forums about like the automation we're planning on doing to the civilians and what we're planning on doing to the early game. So you guys can take a look at those and maybe add some of your suggestions or ideas to that, or just let us know if you agree with the direction we're going in. But yeah, I just wanted to end it there so that way you guys had an idea. Um, just as a reminder, for those that are looking to help support us on Patreon, we do have a Patreon for people that want to help contribute and add more content to the game. So, because we put this on Spotify, so it's just a friendly reminder for those. Is we do have a Patreon. You can find it on our Discord and you can find it on our YouTube channels on the descriptions. So thank.
Remember, guys, this funds the Gundam project. All right,
God damn
so
it.
let me start my campaign before we end.
Ah.
All right. So a long time ago, as a young child, I used to watch Gundam Seed, and when I met Robert, I was like, you know what, man? It'd be nice if we incorporated that in this game. And ever since, the man has been holding me down, constantly shutting down my ideas, never lets me have any fucking freedom. I swear to fucking.
He's just mad 'cause I don't like his Gundam idea. He'll be fine. I'll put your Gundam on a wall as a decal, and then we'll just
Who
put
the
blood
fuck
on
is
it.
gonna see that? It's an RTS.
That's the point, though. Alright, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you guys for coming, or morning, or wherever it is in your geographical location. Let's see. How do I... There we go. I hate you.